You know that feeling when your phone buzzes and you read a message so ordinary that something inside you goes completely still. Not because the words are cruel, because they are too casual, too easy, too much like nothing at all. My husband sent me a text on Valentine's Day, stuck at work. Happy Valentine's, 18 years of marriage. And that was his message. I stared at the screen for a long time in my kitchen in Naperville. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. I told myself it was fine. I told myself work happened. I told myself the feeling in my chest was just disappointment. But something about that text would not let me go. Something about the way he added Happy Valentine's like an afterthought. Like a receipt. Like something he was obligated to produce and then discard. So instead of reheating leftover soup and watching television alone, I grabbed my coat and drove out to Oakbrook. I do not know exactly what I was looking for. I only know that I found something I was never supposed to see. And the stranger who stopped me from walking toward it changed everything about what happened next. The restaurant was Gibson's, the kind of place people go for anniversaries or business deals or apologies that cost at least $200. The parking lot was full. Inside the room smelled like grilled steak and butter and expensive perfume. Low lighting, dark wood, quiet jazz. Couples leaned close across candle-lit tables. I told the hostess it was just me. She gave me a sympathetic little smile and sat me near the back by the bar. I was studying the menu when I heard a laugh across the room. Tom had a very specific laugh, short, almost like a cough. I looked up, 2 tables ahead of me in a corner booth. Tom, he was leaning toward a woman I had never seen before, neat blonde bob, red wool coat draped over the booth beside her. Early 50s, confident posture, the kind of woman who looked comfortable in expensive places. My brain tried to explain it away. A client maybe, a colleague. Then Tom reached across the table and touched her hand, not casually, the way a man touches someone he already knows very well. I felt something cold slide down my spine. Then she touched his cheek, and they kissed, not a polite greeting. A slow, familiar kiss. For a moment I could not move. The restaurant noise faded, forks against plates. Glasses clinking. Conversations around me. All of it sounded far away. 18 years. 18 years of mortgage payments and road trips and school meetings and late-night conversations about retirement. And here he was kissing someone else on Valentine's Day. I pushed my chair back. I needed to walk over there. Needed to stand in front of him and see his face when he realized I had seen everything. I had taken maybe 2 steps when a hand caught my wrist. Not hard, just firm enough to stop me. I turned startled. A man sat at the table beside mine, early 60s. Gray hair, tired eyes, navy sweater, half-finished glass of bourbon in front of him. He nodded toward Tom's booth. "Stay calm," he said quietly. I pulled my arm back. "Excuse me. If you walk over there right now," he said, "they will lie better." I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" He sighed and rubbed his forehead like a man who had not slept much lately. "Because that," he said, nodding toward the booth again, "is my wife." I blinked. "The woman in the red coat," he said. "Marianne." For a second I thought he might be confused. Then he held out his hand. "Greg Holloway, Downers Grove." I shook it automatically. "Dana Mercer." Greg looked back toward the booth. Tom and Marianne were talking again, leaning close like 2 people in their own private world. "I have been sitting here about 20 minutes, Greg said. Figured tonight I would finally see if my suspicions were right, and..." He gave a tired little smile. "Well, I guess we both got our answer." I sank slowly back into my chair. My legs felt weak. Greg watched them carefully. "Do not make a scene," he said. "Not yet." I was not planning to throw a drink at him, I muttered. "Good," Greg said. "Because that would actually make this easier for them." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, Greg pointed subtly toward their table. "Watch." Tom reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He pulled out an envelope, not a small one, a thick, letter-sized envelope. He slid it across the table. Marianne took it, opened it just slightly, then nodded. A moment later, she reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. She handed it to Tom. They spoke quietly. Tom glanced around the room once, quickly. Then he slipped the folder inside his jacket. My stomach tightened. That did not look like flirting. That looked like business. Greg leaned closer so no one else could hear. "I have been following her for a week," he said. "You hired a private investigator?" I asked. He nodded. "Found out she had been meeting someone." "Same man, different places." I looked toward Tom again, toward the man who had texted me Happy Valentines 2 hours earlier. "What kind of places?" I asked quietly. Greg hesitated. Then he said law offices. The words landed like a stone in my chest. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Across the room, Tom signaled the waiter for the check. Marianne touched his hand again. Another quick kiss. Greg exhaled slowly. Then he said something that made the back of my neck prickle. "If I am right," he murmured, "your husband is not just cheating." I turned toward him. "What do you mean?" Greg looked straight at me, and in a calm, almost apologetic voice he said, "He is planning something." He glanced back toward Tom and Marianne as they stood from the booth. Then he added quietly, "And whatever it is, it involves you." The cold air hit my face the moment I stepped outside. Oakbrook in February has that sharp, dry wind that cuts right through your coat. Greg came out a minute later. Tom and Marianne had already left through the side exit. Greg pulled out his phone. "Look," he said. He turned the screen toward me. There were photos, not many but enough. One showed Tom and Marianne walking out of a hotel lobby. Another showed them sitting at a small cafe patio. Dates were visible on the corner of each photo. 2 months ago. 3 weeks ago, last Thursday. My throat tightened. "How long have you known?" I asked. Suspected. Greg shrugged. "Couple months, known for sure. About 4 days. He swiped to another photo. This one made my stomach drop. Tom and Marianne walking into a small brick office building. Above the door was a sign, Anderson and Pike. "Family law?" I stared at it. "You think they are planning a divorce?" I asked. Greg shook his head slowly. "Maybe, but that is not the part that worried me." He zoomed in on the photo. Tom was carrying a folder. The same folder Marianne had handed him tonight inside the restaurant. Greg slipped the phone back into his pocket. "I have been married 33 years, he said quietly. "You start to recognize patterns." "What patterns?" "The kind where people do not just cheat," he said. "They plan their exit." I crossed my arms trying to warm my hands. Tom had been distant lately, working late more often, more time on his phone, but planning something. I was not ready to believe that yet. Greg leaned against a concrete pillar near the entrance. "Let me ask you something," he said. "Has your husband been asking unusual questions about money?" The question hit harder than I expected. I hesitated. Why? Greg did not answer right away. He just watched my face. That was enough. I sighed. "A few things," I admitted. "He asked about refinancing the house last month." Greg nodded. "Anything else?" I thought back. 2 weeks earlier, Tom had asked about the account where I had placed the inheritance my mother left me. Not aggressively, just casually. Still, it had felt strange. He asked if the inheritance money was still in savings. I said slowly. Greg let out a quiet whistle. "Yeah," he said. "That tracks. What does that mean?" He looked toward the parking lot again before answering. "Means your husband might not just be having an affair." The wind lifted a few strands of my hair. "What are you saying?" I asked. Greg's voice stayed calm. "I am saying people our age do not usually blow up their lives without a reason." He paused. "Sometimes that reason is money." Tom came home around 10:15 that night. I heard the garage door open while I was sitting on the couch with the television on. My heart started pounding. The back door opened. Tom walked in carrying a small white pharmacy bag. "Hey," he said casually, "you are still up." I looked at him, the same face I had known for 18 years. The same man I had watched kiss another woman 2 hours earlier. "Yeah," I said, "could not sleep." He set the bag on the kitchen counter and loosened his tie. "Tonight was a mess," he said. "Supplier out of Milwaukee screwed up an order. I had to deal with it." He moved around the kitchen like everything was normal. Opened the refrigerator, grabbed a bottle of water. "Did you eat?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Another lie." Tom took a drink and sighed dramatically. "God, I hate days like this." I watched him carefully. There was no nervousness in his voice, no hesitation, just the same easy tone he had used for years, which meant one thing. He had absolutely no idea I knew. "Sorry about dinner," he added. Then he nudged the pharmacy bag toward me. "Picked something up for you." I walked over slowly and opened it. Inside was a cheap Valentine's card and a small box of chocolate-covered caramels. Generic brand, probably grabbed off a checkout counter. 18 years of marriage, and the man could not even lie with quality chocolate. "Thanks," I said. Tom kissed my cheek lightly. "I am exhausted," he said. Going to take a shower, he headed down the hallway. The moment the bathroom door closed, I gripped the edge of the counter. My hands were shaking, not from sadness, from the effort of keeping quiet. 10 minutes later, I stepped outside onto the back patio and called Greg. He answered on the second ring. "You okay?" he asked. "Define okay." Greg chuckled softly. "Fair." "He came home like nothing happened," I said. "That is usually how this works." Greg exhaled slowly. "Dana, what exactly do you think they are planning?" He hesitated. Then he said, "I think your husband is setting up a very clean exit." "Clean how?" "Clean enough that everyone thinks the divorce was your fault." My stomach tightened. Greg's voice stayed calm. "Because I have seen something like this before, with my brother." His wife convinced everyone he was unstable before she left him. I rubbed my forehead. Tom had recently mentioned to Lacey that I seemed forgetful. At the time I thought he was joking. Now I was not so sure. Greg's voice pulled me back. "There is one more thing," he said. "What?" I asked the investigator to pull email records connected to Marianne's business account. Greg lowered his voice. What he found was not great. My pulse jumped. "What did it say?" Greg paused. Then he read one line slowly. "Dana has been under a lot of stress lately. She forgets things sometimes. I am worried she might need help managing finances soon." The words felt like ice sliding through my chest. That was not just cheating. That was a story being built. A story where I looked unstable. I stared out into the dark backyard. Finally, I said quietly, "So he is not just planning to leave me." Greg did not answer right away. Then he said the sentence that made everything suddenly clear. "No," he said. "I think he is planning to take your money too." I did not sleep much that night. Tom fell asleep almost immediately after his shower, snoring softly beside me like nothing in the world had changed. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the steady ticking of the old wall clock in the hallway. By 6 in the morning, I gave up on sleep completely. Tom got up around 7, shaved, dressed, grabbed coffee. "Long day today," he said. "Meeting in Aurora." I nodded. "Drive safe." He kissed my forehead like he had 1,000 times before. Then he left. The garage door rumbled shut, and the moment his car pulled out of the driveway, something in my chest shifted. Not calm exactly, clarity. I walked straight into the small home office we shared. For years I had handled most of the household paperwork. Taxes, bills, insurance. Tom hated that kind of thing. Said numbers made his head hurt. Which meant if he was planning something financial, he probably assumed I would not notice until it was too late. I opened the file cabinet. I started with the obvious things: bank statements, credit cards, mortgage records. At first, everything looked normal. Then I found the first crack, a credit card I did not recognize. Same bank as our joint card, but a different account number. I pulled the statement, hotel charges, restaurant tabs. A jewelry store in Oakbrook. The dates stretched back almost 3 months. I sat down slowly in the desk chair. 3 months I kept digging. A consultation fee from Anderson and Pike family law, the same office Greg had shown me in the photo. My chest tightened. I flipped through another folder. Inside was a printed document that made my stomach drop. It was a draft financial summary, divorce planning paperwork, my name at the top, Tom's name underneath, and one line that jumped out immediately. Projected relocation of spouse within 60 to 90 days. Relocation of spouse, meaning me. I leaned back in the chair. For a moment the room felt too quiet, too still. Then another memory surfaced. 2 weeks earlier, Tom had asked me something while we were cleaning up after dinner. Is the inheritance still in that savings account? My mother had passed away 3 years ago. The money she left me was not enormous, but it was not small either. Enough to matter. Technically, it was mine alone, separate property, unless it got mixed with marital accounts. Unless someone convinced me to move it. Suddenly, the pieces started fitting together. Tom had not just been cheating. He had been positioning things slowly, carefully, so when he walked away, he could take more than half. I sat there for a long time staring at that document. Anger came first, hot and sharp. Then something steadier replaced it. Focus, I called Eileen Vargas, divorce attorney, Wheaton. Her office was above a small insurance agency. Nothing fancy, beige walls, framed certificates, a large oak desk covered with neatly organized files. She was in her early 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. I handed her the documents. She read quietly for several minutes. Finally, she leaned back. Well, she said, your husband has been busy. You think this is serious? I asked. Eileen raised one eyebrow. He has already consulted a lawyer, she said. That usually means the wheels are moving. I felt my throat tighten. He has been telling people I am forgetful, I added quietly. Like I cannot handle finances. Eileen nodded slowly. That is called laying groundwork. For what? For making you look unreliable, she said. If the divorce turns hostile. I rubbed my hands together nervously. What do I do? Eileen folded her hands. First, you do not confront him. That surprised me. Why not? Because the moment he knows you are aware of the plan, he will move faster. She pointed to the inheritance document. And if he is targeting this money, timing matters. I swallowed. So what should I do? Eileen's voice stayed calm. You document everything. Copies of bank records, credit statements, emails, anything financial. Then she added something that made me feel slightly better. Also open a separate bank account in your name. Move your income there, quietly. I hesitated. This feels sneaky. Eileen gave a small smile. No, she said. Sneaky is what he did. This is just paperwork. Over the next 3 days, I became someone Tom would never have recognized. I copied documents, saved digital records, opened a new checking account at the credit union my friend Sharon managed. Sharon raised her eyebrows when I explained. Honey, she said gently, you are doing the right thing. There was one close call. On Wednesday afternoon, I was photographing bank statements when Tom called unexpectedly. Quick question, he said. Did you ever move that inheritance money like we talked about? For a split second, I almost answered honestly. But something stopped me. No, I said, I forgot. Tom chuckled lightly. Well, maybe we will handle that this weekend. Maybe. When the call ended, my hands shook so badly I had to sit down. That night, Greg called again. I have got news, he said. Good or bad. Depends how you look at it. I waited. The investigator followed them again today, Greg continued. Turns out they are planning a party. Yeah, he said. Private banquet room in Lombard this Saturday. For what? Greg's voice turned grim. An engagement celebration? The words hit me like cold water. Engagement. Apparently, Greg said, your husband thinks you will be out of the picture by then. I stared at the wall in front of me. An engagement party. Tom introducing Marianne to friends. Like our marriage was already over. Greg spoke again. You want to know the interesting part? What? They are inviting people who know you. For a moment, I said nothing. Then something inside me settled. A quiet decision. Good, I said. Greg paused. Good, yes. Why? I looked down at the stack of evidence on my kitchen table. Then I said calmly, because that is exactly where we are going to finish this. By Saturday evening, the snow had started falling again. Not a storm. Just that slow, steady Midwest snowfall that makes the streets look quiet and almost peaceful. The banquet hall sat above a small Italian restaurant in Lombard. I had driven past it a dozen times over the years. Tonight the parking lot was full. I sat in my car for a moment before going inside. My hands were steady, which surprised me. All week I had imagined this moment in different versions. Some where I screamed, some where I cried. But now that it was actually here, I felt something else entirely. Clarity. Simple navy slacks. Cream blouse, camel coat. Nothing dramatic. Just the way I usually dressed, because this was not theater. This was the end of something, and the beginning of something else. I stepped out into the cold and walked inside. Upstairs, the banquet room smelled like pasta sauce and cheap perfume. About 30 people were already there. Colleagues, church friends, neighbors, people who had known Tom and me for years. And at the center of the room, standing near a table decorated with red flowers, was Tom. Next to him stood Marianne. She was wearing a dark green dress, her hair styled carefully. She looked like someone expecting a very good evening. Tom was laughing with 2 men from his company. Then he saw me. I watched the color drain from his face. It happened instantly, like someone had turned off a light behind his eyes. Dana, he said. A few heads turned. The room quieted just slightly. Tom walked toward me quickly. What are you doing here? He asked in a low voice. I smiled politely. Hello, Tom. He glanced around nervously. You were not invited. No, I said. I figured that out. Marianne was staring at us now. Tom, he said cautiously. What is going on? Tom rubbed the back of his neck. Dana, maybe we should talk somewhere private. I looked around the room at people holding glasses of wine, at the decorations clearly meant for a celebration. No, I said calmly. Actually, I think we should talk right here. Before Tom could answer, a woman across the room tapped a glass with a spoon. Marianne's sister, I assumed. Everyone, she said cheerfully, can we get your attention for a moment? People started turning toward her. Tom leaned closer to me urgently. Dana, whatever this is, do not. But I had already stepped forward. Excuse me, I said. The woman with the glass paused. Yes, I smiled politely. Would it be all right if I said something first? She looked confused. Well, I suppose so. Someone handed me the microphone. The room grew quiet. 30 faces looking at me. Tom looked like he might faint. I took a slow breath. Good evening, I said. My name is Dana Mercer. A murmur rippled through the room. Some people clearly recognized the name. I am Tom's wife, I continued. The word wife hung in the air like a dropped plate. Tom stepped forward. Dana, stop, but I kept going. Earlier this week, my husband sent me a text message. I pulled my phone from my purse. It said stuck at work. Happy Valentine's. A few people exchanged glances. I believed him, I said, until I walked into a restaurant in Oakbrook and saw him kissing another woman. Now the room was completely silent. Tom looked like a man who had just been pushed off a cliff. That woman, I said gently, is standing right here tonight. I turned toward Marianne. She looked stunned. Tom told me his marriage was already over, she said quickly. I am sure he did, I replied. Then I set a folder on the table beside me. And if this were only about an affair, I said I would have handled it privately. I opened the folder, but it is not. I held up a sheet of paper, a credit card statement showing hotel charges. Another paper, a consultation with a divorce attorney. Then another, a financial draft assuming I would be relocating from my own home. Gasps spread through the room. Tom tried to grab the microphone. Dana, this is ridiculous. Wait, I said calmly. There is one more thing. At the back of the room, Greg stood up. He had been leaning quietly against the wall near the bar. Hello, he said. My name is Greg Holloway. He nodded toward Marianne, and I am still married to her. Someone whispered, oh my God. Marianne turned toward Tom. You told me you were separated. Tom looked trapped. I placed a final envelope on the table. This, I said to Tom, is a copy of everything I have collected. Bank records, emails, legal notes. I have also sent the same documents to my attorney. Tom's voice cracked. You are humiliating me. I looked at him for a long moment. No, I said quietly, you did that yourself. From the speaker system near the bar, music suddenly started playing. The DJ had accidentally hit the wrong track. Let's Stay Together by Al Green drifted into the room. For a moment nobody moved, then someone rushed over to turn it off. Tom's boss stood across the room with his arms folded looking furious. Marianne's sister was demanding explanations. Marianne herself looked at Tom like she had never seen him before. The room had turned into chaos. I stepped away from the microphone and walked toward the door. No one tried to stop me. By the time I reached the parking lot, snow had started falling again. I stood there for a moment in the quiet. Then I took a deep breath. For the first time all week, I felt completely calm. The first message from Tom came the next morning. I did not read it right away. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea watching snow melt slowly off the backyard fence. The house was quiet in a way it had not been for a long time. Not empty, just peaceful. My phone buzzed again. Then again, finally I picked it up. Dana, please call me. A minute later, this got out of control. Then another. We need to talk. I set the phone back down without answering. 18 years of marriage teaches you something important. You learn the difference between a conversation and an excuse. Tom did not come home that night, or the next one. On Monday, he sent another message. I am staying somewhere in Elmhurst for a while. I imagined the kind of apartment he meant. Temporary furniture, neutral walls, take-out containers on the counter, not the life he had pictured on Saturday night. Apparently, Marianne had not stayed with him either. Greg called me Sunday afternoon. Well, he said, that relationship did not survive the weekend. What happened? Greg chuckled softly. Turns out Tom was not exactly honest about his finances. What a surprise. Yet Greg said, Marianne thought he had a lot more money available. When she realized she had blown up her marriage for a man with a rented apartment. We both went quiet for a moment. It was not funny exactly, but there was a certain grim irony to it. The harder conversation came 2 weeks later. Lacey showed up at my door on a Sunday afternoon. She stood on the porch in a gray coat, arms folded across her chest. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Why did you do that?" Her voice was not angry exactly. More confused. "Honey," I said gently, "come inside." She stepped into the kitchen and sat down. "I mean it," she said. "Why would you embarrass Dad like that in front of everyone?" I sat across from her. "Your dad did not tell you what happened." "He said you blew up at some party," she said, "that you had been under a lot of stress." There it was. The story Tom had been building. I stood up and walked into the office. When I came back, I set a small stack of papers on the table. "What is this?" Lacey asked. "Just look." She began flipping through them. Credit card statements, hotel receipts, emails, the financial planning draft. The room stayed quiet while she read. Then she turned to the email Greg had shown me. The one where Tom wrote that I had been forgetful, that I might need help managing money. Lacey sat back slowly. "He told me you were struggling," she said quietly. "I know." She stared down at the papers. For a long moment she did not say anything. Finally she looked up. "I thought you were just being dramatic. That would have been easier," I said softly. Lacey rubbed her forehead. "Dad said the marriage was already over." I shrugged slightly. That was news to me. Silence stretched between us. Then Lacey said something that surprised me. "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "He kept saying you were the strong one," she said. Her voice softened. Now I think he was right. It was not a full apology, but it was enough. Spring arrived slowly that year. Snow melted. The trees along the streets in Naperville started turning green again. Life did not magically become perfect. Divorces never do. There were meetings with lawyers, documents to sign, conversations that felt longer than they needed to be. But one thing became clear very quickly. Tom's plan had not worked. Eileen's preparation had closed every door he expected to walk through. The inheritance money stayed protected. The house stayed mine, and the story he had tried to build about me being unstable collapsed the moment people saw the evidence. The truth is stubborn that way. A few months later, I took a drive up toward Lake Michigan, just me. No schedule, no explanations. I parked near the water and sat on a bench, watching the waves roll in slowly. At 52, starting over sounded terrifying when I first thought about it. But sitting there that afternoon, I realized something. The fear had mostly been about losing a life I thought was secure. Once that illusion disappeared, things looked different. Quieter, simpler, more honest. Tom thought the cruelest thing he could do was replace me without warning. But the truth is the cruelest thing would have been letting him succeed. I want to leave you with something before I go. Because this story is not really about Valentine's Day, or a steakhouse, or an engagement party that became something else entirely. It is about what happens when someone decides you are too comfortable and too trusting to see what is coming. And what happens when they are wrong. If you have ever had to hold on to your dignity while your heart was breaking, then you probably understand exactly what it feels like to stand in a parking lot in the snow and breathe for the first time in a week. Now I want to hear from you. Drop your city in the comments and tell me which moment in this story made you stop breathing. Was it when Greg stopped me from walking over to that table? Was it when I stepped up to the microphone? Or was it when the DJ accidentally played Let's Stay Together? I read every single comment, and I want to know your answer. If this story gave you something today, please hit the like button right now. It helps more people find stories like this one. Subscribe to Jennifer's Story for new episodes every week. And the next story, already waiting on your screen right now, is about a woman who discovered her husband had been hiding a second life for 11 years. Every detail of what she found will leave you completely speechless. Stay right there. You need to hear it.